Welcome to Salon Talks. I'm Mary Elizabeth Williams, and this fun lady next to me is Mae Whitman. She is an actor, a writer, a producer, a dancer, a singer, a podcaster. You know her from every single thing. She was the voice of Tinkerbell, which is really one of the most important. You know her from Parenthood, from Independence Day, from The Duff, the all-time classic, Perks of Being a Wallflower. So many amazing roles. Her newest one, though, is the Hulu musical series. It's pretty incredible and special, and it's called Up Here High.
Hi.
Talk to me about this incredible, amazing, unusual show.
Yes, it is unusual. It's so funny. It's like, everyone's always like, tell it to us in a sentence. And I'm like, I can't, because it's so different. It's like, it's not like anything I've seen. It's not like anything I've been a part of. I mean, the general vague idea of it is sort of, you know, it's a love story. It's a rom-com, but it's, you know, which I also love. It has like a very like 90s nostalgic vibe. But I think, you know, the sort of hot take on it is it's an original musical that it's sort of like, what if the voices in your head express themselves through song? You know, it's just a kind of a different way of expressing the constant narrative that's going on in your head and the insecurities and the defense mechanisms and all this stuff. And so I was drawn to it because it's so much. It's on the surface, you're like, sure, it's funny, it's, you know, light, it's heartwarming, but then it's also really deals with deep, intense, like, themes of mental health and trauma and all of that, but it sort of all comes together in this really interesting package. So I think that was sort of what drew me to it as well, was that it wasn't like anything I'd seen before. And so it was kind of this exciting experiment where, you know, sometimes you go into something and you're like, yeah, we've seen this before, that we know if we just rely on this kind of a shot or this trope or whatever, we can do it. But this was sort of like, we were like, I don't know, there's no guidebook, you know, you just sort of, we were figuring it out as we went, which was really exciting.
And you have this Greek chorus.
Yes.
That's really interesting.
Yes.
And in front of the camera and behind the camera, the amount of musical talent in this show is like crazy.
It's almost like comical. Like you're like, you guys, this is a practical joke. You
Right.
can't all be working on one project. It should be like
Right.
illegal.
Let's start dropping names.
We got Thomas Kail, Hamilton. We got the Lopez's, who, you know, I can't even begin to go there. Frozen, Book of Mormon, Avenue Q. I mean, it just goes on. And then, of course, Stephen Levinson, who did Tick, Tick, Boom, and Dear Evan Hansen, and Danielle Whittle-Sanchez. Like, there's like, it just keeps going on the list. It never ends. And I remember getting the audition sheet and being like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Like, and, you know, I think initially I was terrified and really intimidated because you're like, I'm going to throw myself into the deep end of doing this musical theater situation, which I've never done before, with the uppermost echelon of people involved. And you're like, but it's gonna be so scary. And it's gonna be like, you know, I pictured it being like the audition was gonna be like Tar, where they're all using giant words that I don't understand and making jokes that, you know, are way over my head. And it couldn't have been more opposite than that. It was like, I think sometimes when people are so good at what they do, they don't need to be rubbing it in your face. It just kind of comes out of them naturally. And they just, everyone, it's like in their bones what they do. And they just are so free with it. There was no controlling. It was very like collaborative. They wanted to bring people into the job that they liked, they identified with something about them. They weren't just trying to mold us into something we weren't. They wanted us to bring our own spirit and energy to the characters and the project. So thank the Lord.
And it takes place in 1999.
Yes, great year.
Great year.
Great year.
Now, I know you're a Sex and the City fan, so
Yes,
now
of course.
you get to live in Carrie Bradshaw's 1999 Manhattan.
Unbelievable.
You got to do it.
Truly.
Like you got
like
to time
somewhere on a time, like in a different timeline, you know, she's down there dealing with her stuff while I'm uptown dealing with my stuff. Like
she's like fighting with
yes,
Jaden over here.
Exactly. There's
And
like
you are,
yes.
like in plastic pants.
Yes, Brady is getting at the playground while I'm in plastic pants dancing down the street. It was it's really cool. And I mean, I'm such a 90s fanatic. I'm like, I genuinely am like, I stopped developing in like 1999. I was like, you know what? I'm going to just keep wearing these clothes and listening to this music.
And you're like 11 at this point.
I'm like, yeah, weird. I think probably because I was a child actor, somehow my like psychological, I was a little bit like ahead where I'm like, I feel like an old man trapped in like a young woman's body right now. Like, I'm exhausted, you know, I'm jaded, I'm tired. But like, that's, I think for some reason, you know, it was such a formative time. It's like that time where you're, you know, starting to have crushes and you're like understanding music and you're like, I'm going to Lilith Fair. You guys don't understand what it's like, you know. I'm like, Paula Cole gets me and you don't, Mom. It's like that kind of a energy, you know? And so I feel like to be able to go back to that time as an adult and like live what that felt like, it was so nostalgic and amazing. And the clothes were incredible. Everybody, the thing I loved about it too is it wasn't like the cute side of the 90s. It was like, we're gonna make this real 90s, like Coldwater Creek 90s. Like, you're gonna be in sweaters. It's not gonna always be the best concept. Cause you know, the real ones, you gotta go there. I'm like, to this generation, I'm like, commit to the look. If you wanna go 90s, really get those cargos on and be serious about this, because it was tough.
Men in Dockers.
Yes.
Just, it's like men in Dockers.
You got Jankos, you got Dockers. It was brutal.
The girl from Anthro class is just like
Brilliant.
Like
It's exact.
The wardrobe is like
I know.
perfection.
Lots of Doc Martens.
Lots of Docs.
Yes.
Yeah, you talked about being a child actor. You were like the child actor. You were in big time.
Yeah.
And When a Man Loves a Woman, One Fine Day, a little movie called Independence Day. You grew up in front of the camera. A lot of actors who went through that did not come out as well as you did. Did not.
Yeah.
I want to know what was it about your family? What was it about your upbringing that enabled you to endure this in a way where you really
Are okay-ish.
finessed? Yeah, where you finessed it, because it's a hard industry.
It really is. I mean, it's something I think about a lot, and I think too, just the older I get, and you know, especially now having played a mom, it brings a completely different perspective to it. You know, I truly always related back to like, I was so used to, you know, you film so many scenes in cars, and I was so used to sitting in the passenger side of a car looking up at a person playing my parent. And I remember the first scene I filmed behind the wheel looking over at my child from this way, and I was like, this is really freaking me out. But you know, it's I think any industry that's mainly like adult focused, having a child in it, it can be tricky, especially with this one where you're on camera. And I think it really is about how I'm so lucky. I mean, my publicist, who's known me since I was a baby, who's here with me, like, she would say the same thing. It's like, it was really all my parents. Like, I got so lucky. I had like genuinely good parents who were super mature. They helped me like get my priorities in order, and they were so like, you know, we communicated about everything. The priority was always truly my happiness as a child. You know, it was be like, if there's a field trip to the dinosaur museum and it, you know, coincides with this Martin Scorsese movie, like, too bad, she wants to do the field trip. You know, it was very like, it was about me as a human being and what I wanted to do. And like, luckily, being on a set, it felt like home from like the get-go. I'm very social. I loved, it's like you make family. You create just members of a family, and you're a team. And I think in the right setting, it can be a really like stimulating and wonderful and actually like protective kind of a universe for kids. But you get into trouble because you really have to have people who have your true and genuine best interest as a person at heart around you. And I think, unfortunately, you know, it behooves people, like any big, you know, situation, a corporation or any operation, it's like sometimes shaving a little off the edges or pushing you a little bit or manipulating you a little bit, it can kind of like help them out to cut these corners, and little things can kind of have a huge effect on like children's lives, I think. And I think it's just unfortunate because you have to be so meticulously careful about the environment that you put your kid in. I mean, my parents would pass on everything. If they talked, they would have like long phone conversations, long meetings with people to get a sense of them as human beings and how they were gonna keep me safe. And I felt like, I mean, my parents wouldn't let me do Dave Letterman when I was a kid because they didn't think, because they had seen him make jokes at children's expenses, you know, not anything like mean, but just sort of like not having them in on the joke. And they were like, no, we don't want to put you in that situation. And God bless, Dave Letterman like made a tape where they sent it and they were like, look, this is Dave being really sweet with kids and we promise we'll take care of her. And I did, and they did. And so it's like, I think you just have to be so present. You have to like find a way to really focus on bringing yourself back to a place of like health and balance and true keeping yourself rooted and not letting the noise just kind of like up here guide you on your life path and, you know, kind of push you away from what you know to be true and genuine. And honestly, I'm just lucky that I had that, because I would be, you know, licking drugs off a whatever sidewalk if I didn't have that. I would be like, if I didn't have my parents keeping, you know, things balanced. So I'm forever thankful for that.
And when you talk about that rootedness,
Yeah.
and that ability to balance it all, you know, the roles that you've played, some really difficult roles, some indelible roles, some roles that not everybody else would have taken. I know, particularly, I'm thinking about something you said to Build about the Duff,
Yeah.
and the way in which you worked really hard to create this character
Yeah.
and make her real,
Yeah.
and make her someone that people wanted to identify with and understand. Watching this show now, to me, almost feels like a continuation of that story.
Totally.
Because it's about the labels that other people put on us, and then the labels that we put on ourselves, and wading through all of that
That's
noise.
right. And not letting it, you know, it throw you completely off course from what you know to be true for yourself. And I think like you're saying, it is. It's like the Duff was so important to me because, you know, again, initially I think I just was really specific about the script because I have been in that position, having been in this industry my whole life and having not just been a supermodel or whatever the thing is, you know, your average standard of unhealthy, you know, beauty in this industry. It was like, and, you know, but then you would have people who'd be like, well, you're not those things, you're, you know, this or that. It's like, and I'm like, but that's exactly the point, is that there's this kind of like comparison thing that happens and this striving to be this thing, but it's like, it's all about perception, and it's all about this, you know, we act like things are objective that are completely subjective, and it's almost like we have to be the rulers of change of that, and we have to kind of expand our perspective to realize that doesn't exist. That thing that it's like, well, you know, if you could just be this, then that thing will go away. That stigma, that feeling, that insecurity will go away. But it's not that. There's always something that someone that you can compare yourself to, or that someone else will compare you to, and it's about finding a way of being like, that's actually just a mindset, and I'm not subscribing to it, and I don't have to, and then it's over, it dissipates. And I think like I really had been in positions like that my whole life growing up in this industry of like, you know, body standards and all these things, and it was important to me to show like, I was bullied in high school. I've been dealing with this, you know, image stuff my whole life, and I want you all to know that it's not real. It's a way of being that is outdated and old, and we can change it by throwing it in the trash. And I think you're right that like with this show, it kind of takes that to a deeper level when it comes to like mental health and trauma. And I think like, you know, my whole career has been based on like communicating. Like I just picture, I'm like, if one person can take something from this that makes them feel a little bit better or a little less alone or a little more understood, then like I'm good. My job is done. And I feel like the one thing that I can do for all the things I can't is like share my experience genuinely, like try to really like be vulnerable. I get off on being vulnerable enough to try to, you know, communicate to people and through the experiences. And I feel like this is this project, first of all, it was extremely vulnerable to do, not just because it was singing, which is difficult and strange and vulnerable, but because the deeper themes of it are really like examining your past trauma and your defense mechanisms and the things that the judgments that you put in place about yourself, about other people, about, the world that you live in that maybe you formulated when you were younger to try to keep you safe, but that the idea of that can be a false sense of safety. The idea that tells you not to run into the middle of the street because you'll be hit by a car maybe isn't the same voice you should listen to that says, don't try to do the thing that you really want to do because you'll fail. It's like, there's a discrepancy, and I feel like it's easy to kind of try to keep yourself in a zone that feels like, well, maybe if I don't rock the boat, maybe if I don't, I don't know what's on the other side and I can't control it, so I'm never going to try, as opposed to reframing the idea of the process and going, I'm actually going to find joy in the process of not knowing what's on the other side, but knowing that whatever it is, if I lay the foundation correctly, at least I'll have myself there, and I'll know how I got there and where I am, and I trust that it will be more genuine than where I am now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's, when you're talking about delivering that message and setting that example, you're not just doing it in your acting. You've also been really public about your experience of endometriosis. Thank you so much for that, for being so candid about it. You're producing a documentary that's
amazing.
Coming out now. Tell me about that. Tell me about what your own experience was. You were dismissed at 15, like it took you 15 years?
Yes.
15 years.
Which, by the way, is
pain.
not uncommon.
No, not at all.
It's like the average genuine diagnosis time for people with endo is like 10 to 15 years. Because the issue, of course, of women's health, which is like something that is not taken seriously, is not being funded properly, is not being developed, is not being like examined properly. It is sort of, it's like this really complicated situation where, and like OBGYNs, they have to be trained to do everything, and it has to be a huge range of knowledge, as opposed to this very specialized, very specific sort of like not rare, not really known about, not rare. I mean, 1 in 7 people is affected by endometriosis, they think, which is insane. But I think there's such a lack of awareness, and it requires specialized knowledge, and it's really infuriating for, I think, people that are asked to have this giant wealth of knowledge to then also have to try to know the ins and outs of this really complicated disease. And so I think forever it was just, and my cramps were like, I ended up getting to the point where I was like, I have like a week and a half out of every month that's good, and then the rest of it is completely messed up with like pain and bloating and anxiety and stress. And it's just the concept of not being able to gain an understanding of what your body is going through is the most infuriating and like isolating thing, because you're like, am I crazy? Is this not real? Is it not that big of a deal? What's happening? I would leave these like appointments going, what is it? I don't understand. Like they'd say, oh, we'll just go on birth control, or, oh, have a baby, imagine, or, oh, God forbid, get a hysterectomy, God forbid, because it might be this thing that's really, it's this complicated disease and there's nothing you can really do about it, and you can get a surgery, but it never works, and et cetera, et cetera. And so you just lose hope and you just deal with it. And it was like, I was like just used to, I'd be like, okay, Cedars-Sinai, here I come, like, they'd put me on morphine. I'd be, barfing my guts out. It was like I was passing on jobs. And it also affected my confidence, because I was like, I can't, people would be like, oh, you're flaky, you can't commit to something. And I'd be like, I'm dying. And I can't explain to you why, because you don't understand that this is a real condition. And it is so, I feel like it's a part of my like real calling in this life, is to like try to get as much awareness about that as possible. Because the moment I found my surgeon, Dr. Orbuck, like the moment I sat across from her, she was like, you have 3 hours. I make my appointments 3 hours long. She was like, she drew an upside down diagram of a vagina and explained upside down. I was like, this woman is incredible, also a Gemini. She drew this thing out and was writing. She was like, this is what it is, this is what it means, this is why it happens, this is what it can be. And I was like, I cried hysterically. And it was a comprehensive thing. It was like your brain and your heart and what it does to your nervous system and all these things. And there is a way to manage the pain. There's no cure for the disease, but with proper treatment, with the proper excision, like there's a way to manage it. And I feel like, the documentary Below the Belt, which I highly recommend everyone watching. Even I, who have been dealing with this for so long, I cried like a baby when I saw it in the theater. Everyone that saw it in the theater was crying like a baby. And so I just really would love for that to be something, because everyone I meet knows somebody who's affected by it, you know?
Yeah, because it affects millions.
Yeah.
Millions of people. I want to ask you one more question.
Yes.
Which is, all right, so you love the 90s. What was your favorite thing about doing a show set in 99? Was it a song? Was it an outfit? Was it a flip phone?
Well, my serious answer is the part that was really great about it was not having cell phones, because the cell phones have completely busted up the whole situation. Like, so many conflicts can just be solved by Googling it or Instagram stalking someone. Like, the concept of getting to know someone in like a timely manner where you see what they put forth and you're not sure what it means, and then what are you willing to give, what are they willing to give, has kind of gone out the window. I'm like, now you look at their Instagram and you're like, ew, I don't like this, I'm not doing it, you know what I mean? And that it can mess up your judgment of something. It doesn't play out the way that it used to. And I feel like that, and also as an actor, just not looking down, it's like you're actually looking up and aware of your situation. But I think in a fun way, the clothes, like our stylist, Nikki, was so real. She was like, I'm not doing the fake thing. She's like, I'm going to Delia's. I'm going to Limited 2. I'm getting this, you know, it was very like legit. And I feel like being able to do that, and then also exploring that, like with Carlos, my co-star, who's incredible and wonderfully talented and kind and generous and stuff, like every time he would come out in like a terrible, you know, polo, I would just die laughing, because I think it's the funniest thing of all time.
It's pretty
And
good.
also being terrified of Y2K is still, to me, iconic. Like,
It's really
I
funny.
remember my dad being like, you don't understand. The computers are going to explode. The zeros can't be. And I was like, okay, yeah, no, it's going to be okay. Let's
won't
just
be
try
able
to
to
get
handle
through
the
this. Yeah.
zeros.
I was like, let's just try to get through to 12:01, Dad. We'll deal with the rest later.
And we somehow made it.
Here we are,
Mae
better than
Whitman,
ever.
Thank you so much for talking to me
Thank you so much
today.
for having
The show
me.
is called Up Here. The documentary is called
Below the Belt.
Below the Belt.
It's going to be on PBS in June. This is it. We're coming for you, Endo.